Compared to Singapore, Bangladesh's handling of its finances has become news fodder, especially now that some hackers were able to steal $81 million from the country's central bank. US law enforcement is now working with Bangladeshi authorities to probe one of the biggest transnational cyber theft cases in the world.
Million, 30 million, all in US dollars, 19 million, and 25 million.
How do you make $1 billion disappear? In Hollywood heist movies, the thieves rappel down skylights, cut into vaults, and crack safes with lasers and precision tools. There's always a high-speed chase, a tense negotiation, and a last-second escape. The film builds to a climax you can see, hear, and feel. But what if I told you the most successful robbery of the 21st century had none of that? No vaults, no getaway cars, no masks. Just a handful of people at keyboards, a network connection, and the kind of patient rehearsals that would make any movie crew envious. They made nearly $1 billion vanish, and for days, the world didn't know what happened. At the heart of this story is a routine most of us don't think about. The quiet message that moves money between banks. It uses SWIFT, a global messaging system that connects thousands of banks and moves trillions of dollars. SWIFT is the plumbing of international finance, invisible, reliable, and trusted, until one weekend in February of 2016, when trust was weaponized. Months before a single wire move, an ordinary-looking email arrived inside the Bangladesh bank. It might have said invoice, application, or important update. One employee clicked on the attachment. That single click let a piece of malware slip into the bank's network, silent, patient, and invisible. The intruders didn't rush. They studied everything. Who logged in, when approvals happened, and how transfers were handled, and which accounts held foreign reserves. They learned rhythms and routines until they could predict behavior. For weeks, maybe even months, they rehearsed in secret. They captured screenshots of staff approving legitimate transactions, recorded credentials, and mapped internal systems. When they finally struck, every message looked like the authentic instruction from the bank itself. Friday, February 5th, 2016 was the perfect moment. The work week had ended, the bank would close for a weekend and up-and-coming holidays. At night, while Dhaka slept, the attackers used stolen credentials to send 35 payment orders to the Federal Bank Reserve of New York. Each message was immaculate, properly formatted, signed, and encrypted. Those requests instructed transfers of nearly $1 billion from the Bangladesh account to a receiving account in Sri Lanka and Philippines. The hackers had prepared for this day for months in advance. Shell companies had been created, bank accounts opened, and intermediaries lined up. The destination were chosen for a reason. Jurisdictions where oversight was weaker and where casinos and cash-heavy businesses could launder money quickly. As the virus left New York, tens of millions moved within hours. But a single human moment changed everything. At Fed, a compliance officer paused over a transfer to an entity called the Shalika Foundation in Sri Lanka. On the instructions, the word foundation was misspelled. A tiny typo, the error that triggered a manual overview. That one delay held up most of the transfers and gave investigators time to react. By the time systems were checked and alarm raised, 81 million had already left the accounts, mostly routed into accounts in the Philippines and quickly funneled into casinos. The remainder 850 million was stopped. A typo, a human double-take, and the rest of the scheme unraveled. When bank employees returned on Monday, the bank's internal printer had started spitting out pages and pages of SWIFT confirmations that no one had authorized. The attackers have disabled the printer for days as a part of their plan, delaying the appearance of paper evidence. Frantic calls to New York confirmed the worst. Money had left the account. The Bangladesh bank was supposed to be protected by protocol, hardware, and staff. In reality, investigators found a shocking lack of basic cybersecurity hygiene. The SWIFT terminal, the machine that sends and receives global payments, was connected to the internet through a cheap second-hand router. There was no proper firewall. Passwords were, alarmingly, stored in clear sticky notes taped to monitors. The hackers didn't need elite exploits or groundbreaking malware. They simply took advantage of negligence. Tracing the successful transfers led to Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation in the Philippines. 4 accounts opened days earlier under fake names and received tens of millions of dollars, which were then converted into pesos and funneled into casinos. Casinos in Manila had become a laundromat. Chips purchased, games played, and then chips cashed out. And suddenly, the money looked legitimate. Within hours, the trail thinned. A portion, around $15 million, was eventually recovered. The rest disappeared into shell companies, cash conversions, and offshore accounts, and likely into channels that fund other operations. Forensic analysis of the malware and the attacker's methods uncovered an eerie echo of earlier cyber attacks. The code shared hallmarks with the 2014 Sony Pictures breach. The encryption quirks and the operational patterns matched a group cybersecurity firms had been watching for years, the Lazarus Group. Believed by intelligence agencies to be linked to North Korea, the Lazarus Group had a track record. Sony, WannaCry ransomware, and a string of high-stakes cybersecurity thefts. If Lazarus was indeed behind the Bangladesh operation, then the heist was less about thrill and more about survival. An isolated nation seeking foreign currency by any means necessary. North Korea's motive, although cruel, makes a sort of sense. Sanctioned, isolated, and cut off from legitimate finance, state actors and affiliate groups turned to cybercrime to raise money. Hacking banks and other external exchanges became a model. Malware became a minting press when conventional revenue streams were closed. The attackers have written custom tools to manipulate Swift messages while scrubbing evidence. They could create authentic-looking payment orders, delete logs, and disable printers to delay discovery. They observed the bank's routines long enough to mimic them convincingly, ensuring the fraudulent orders would pass through automated checks only stopped by human curiosity. The operation was a study in patience. Once the money arrived in Philippines, casinos' ecosystem, casinos' relative anonymity of large cash purchases, and gaps in anti-money laundering enforcement created a perfect escape hatch. The operation exploited a specific combination of weak controls and human trust. Bank trusted Swift messages, casinos accepted marked funds, and regulatory systems in several jurisdictions weren't wired for a cross-border rapid response. The international fallout was swift and messy. Bangladesh sued the RCBC in US courts. The Philippines convened hearings. Bank managers testified, casinos executives denied wrongdoing, and prosecutors chased fragments of evidence across the continents. Swift, embarrassed by the revelation that its network could be used to route fraudulent instructions, tightened security protocols, and pushed customers to adopt stronger operational control. And yet, reforms can go only so far when fundamentally the problem is human and institutional. No matter how strong the encryption is, it wouldn't prevent an employee from clicking a crafted attachment. No matter how many cryptographic checks exist, they don't replace basic operational hygiene. Isolated terminals, rotated passwords, patched servers. The lesson was blunt. The systems can be secure in theory, but crack in practice, because people and processes were the weak links. The Bangladesh episode wasn't an isolated experiment. It was a prototype. After 2016, similar attempts surfaced in other countries, Vietnam, Ecuador, and beyond, bearing operational patterns and malware similarities. The model evolved. Lazarus and other groups later shifted to cryptocurrencies and digital exchanges, exploiting the relative anonymity of the blockchain asset and the sometimes lax security of early exchanges. Where Swift had paper trails and regulated nodes, cryptocurrencies offered a new frontier. Convert stolen funds into tokens, move them through mixers and offshore wallets, and cash them out in places that don't ask too many questions. This is the modern arc of grand theft. From vaults to verifiers, from drills to domain names, the romantic imagery of masked thieves and cinematic chases has been replaced by a colder truth. The actors in this new drama wear no disguises and leave no fingerprints. Their stage is the world of credentials and privileges, and their tools are patience and plausibility, and the stakes are national. There is a kind of a dark poetry to this. The team rehearsing for months, pulling off a nearly flawless operation, undone only by a human typo. The drama is there, only quieter, more bureaucratic. A broken printer, a misspelled word, and a compliance officer's hesitation have become a pivotal moment that decided the fate of $1 billion. Since then, the world has not returned to complacency. Banks upgraded their defenses. Swift introduced stricter customer security programs, and regulatory scrutiny around money laundering tightened. Cybersecurity became part of national security conversations. But threat actors evolved at the same time, moving the battle to a new terrain where rules are less mature and oversight is thinner. The Bangladesh case remains instructive because it reframed how we think about crime, not as a physical assault, but as an exploitation of trust. It stripped away the romance that showed the real tools of modern theft: emails, credentials, carefully timed operations, and the kind of small human errors that become catastrophic on a global scale.